Hello and welcome to this Heroes of Blackreach campaign series. In this video I'll be playing through Scenario 8, No More Mystery. So this is the battle grid for this scenario. The Ultramarine objective is down here in the bottom right corner, and this region marked with red cubes is the Orcs deployment zone. The Ultramarines will be deploying off the battle grid on the left hand side. The battle will last 6 turns and the Orcs will start with the initiative. Each player will be drawing 4 action cards and have a hand limit of 4 cards. The goal of the Ultramarine player is to control the objective before the end of turn 6. The game ends as soon as this goal is fulfilled. If it's not achieved, it's a victory for the Orcs. So this is a part of the Ultramarine army, and we've got Sergeant Elias's squad. We have to bring his scout squad along. And his scout squad is composed of 3 units of scouts and Sergeant Elias. To the left we have the Land Speeder Storm. So this is the transport for the scout squad. So it's a very fast moving unit, skims across the surface. And that's equipped with a grenade launcher. And the grenade launcher gives the Land Speeder Storm the Overwatch special ability, which means that that unit can fire during an opponent's activation. On the right hand side we have Brother Venatio. So he's the company apothecary, which means that he has the ability to heal other Space Marine units. And then his recruitment option is the Thunderfire Cannon. So the Thunderfire Cannon is good at firing long-range shots across the battlefield and good at picking off targets before the troops actually get there. And to make it more accurate, I've also added a Signum. So the Signum helps the Thunderfire Cannon to be more accurate. So it sort of points a laser dot on the target, which means that the Thunderfire Cannon doesn't scatter so easily. So this is the second part of the Ultramarines army. So this time we have the tactical squad with Sergeant Vorolanus, so we have to bring that along because that's part of the scenario requirements. So Sergeant Vorolanus' tactical squad consists of 2 units of tactical marines, a unit of marines with a plasma gun, and Sergeant Vorolanus himself. And they'll be riding in their transport vehicle, the Rhino, so that should help them to get across the battle grid just that little bit quicker than walking. And everyone on this recruitment tile and the support tile has access to grenades. So there are 3 grenade tokens that can be used during the battle. And on the right hand side we have Honoured Brother Praebian, and he's very good in close assault. So he should hopefully be quite useful at getting the Orcs off that objective. So the plan with this Ultramarine army is to use the transport vehicles to move across the battle grid as quickly as possible and get the troops towards the objective. And all the time using the Thunderfire Cannon to put down fire and thin out the Orcs as they move. So there are a total of 4 order stars for the army. So that means the Ultramarines will start with 4 orders. So here's half of the army for the Orcs. Now the Orcs have to bring along Malagra, and he's the big mech that's been in charge of the submersible. And for his protection, he's bringing along some Squigs. And Squigs have the bodyguard ability, which means that they can take a hit for Malagra. Then on the left, we have the Green Raiders. And the Green Raiders consist of 4 units of sluggers. And they're going to be bringing along a Killer Can. Killer Cans are a good defensive unit because they put out quite a lot of firepower. But unfortunately, they only have 1 wound. So if it gets damaged, it gets destroyed. Next, the squad are bringing along Tank Buster Bombs. So that gives them 3 tank buster bombs that they can use to take out any Ultramarine vehicles. And this is the second half of the Orc army. So here we have the Sons of Morg, and they consist of 2 units of sluggers and 2 units of shooters. Next we have another Killer Can, again hoping to use that Killer Can to do some good defensive work. Next is the War Buggy. So this is a fast moving unit that's good against infantry and light vehicles. So hopefully once the Ultramarines come out of those transports, the War Buggy will be able to come along and mop them up. And finally, a slightly crazy unit, the shock attack gun. So this is a very strange weapon. It fires Gretchen through the warp and directly into the armor of the enemy. But unfortunately it's very unstable, but it does dish out a good deal of damage if it does work. So I'm bringing along this one really just for a little bit of fun, so we'll see how it works. And then finally, the boss token. This just adds an extra order to the Orc army. So the Orcs have a total of 3 order stars, which means they'll get 3 order tokens. So the idea with this Orc army is to use the killer cans and the shock attack gun to set up some lines of fire across the battle grid, which makes it hard for the Ultramarines to get very far with their vehicles. And then hopefully crack open those vehicles and use the war buggy and the squads of Orc boys to charge those Ultramarines and see if they can slow them down and ultimately finish them off and stop them reaching that objective. Okay, so now we've seen the armies, let's move on to deployment. So here we are at the end of the deployment for the Orc. So the Big Mech Malagra and his bodyguard Squigs have deployed into this ruined building at the bottom of the battle grid. Next to them is the shock attack gun, looking across through the gap in the barricades towards the advancing Ultramarines. The 4 sluggers of the Green Raiders have deployed into this building behind the barricades, and the Sons of Morg have spread out through the junkyard and the building. Next, the 2 killer cans, one right on the front line on the left hand side, and the other one back in a crater on the right hand side. And next to the killer can on the right hand side is the war buggy, ready to drive forward and take on anything as necessary. So next, the Ultramarines are able to deploy their scouts onto the battle grid. So this land speeder storm comes forward 3 squares, so that scout ability means that they can deploy onto the battle grid even though the rest of the army is not yet deployed. And that land speeder storm contains 3 units of scouts and Sergeant Elias. Okay, so that's the end of deployment. Let's move into turn 1. So here we are at the start of turn 1, and this is the orders phase. So the Orcs go first, they have the initiative, and they've put down their 3 order tokens first. 1 order token has gone on the Squigs, 1 order token has been given to the Big Mech, and finally 1 order token on this unit of sluggers at the top here. Next we have the orders for the Ultramarines. So at the bottom we have an order for Brother Praebian, and then above him an order for Brother Venatio, next an order for the Thunderfire Cannon, and finally an order for the Land Speeder Storm. So now we've seen all the orders, it's time to move into the activation phase. First activation for the Orcs, and it's this Big Mech, and he's choosing to move back into these rocks. First activation for the Ultramarines, and it's the Thunderfire Cannon, so it moves forward onto the battle grid and takes up position in this crater. Second activation for the Orcs, and it's this unit of Squigs, and they're choosing to move back towards the submersible, and so they finish up in this location here. Second activation for the Ultramarines, and it's Brother Venatio. He's choosing to move past the Thunderfire Cannon and into the ruins. Third activation for the Orcs is this unit of sluggers, and they're choosing to pull back into these rocks. Third activation for the Ultramarines, and it's Brother Praebian, and he's choosing to move up alongside Brother Venatio. So the fourth activation for the Ultramarines is the Land Speeder Storm. So the Land Speeder Storm is moving up towards the top of the battle grid. However, it comes to a stop at this point as the Orcs play opportunistic fire. And so the Orcs are going to give one of their units the Overwatch special ability. And they're giving that ability to this killer can here. Before they roll the dice to fire on the Land Speeder Storm, the Orcs also play this card for the +1 alternate bonus to their firing. In order to hit that Land Speeder, the killer can needs to roll a 3 or more, and the Orcs manage to roll a 3, which means they've hit the Land Speeder Storm. So the Scouts and Sergeant Elias come scrambling out of the wreckage, each one of them taking a suppressed marker. So that's all of the activations for turn 1. Now we'll move into the supply phase. So here we are in the supply phase, and the first to move is the Orcs. So these 2 units have moved across from their position up here. And this Orc unit has moved down from where it was in the scrapyard down into the building. On the right hand side of the battle grid, the killer can has moved down closer to the objective. The war buggy has moved over to this position. And the sluggers unit that was in the scrapyard is now hiding in this crater. Next, it's the turn of the Ultramarines to move in the supply phase. They started with these 4 scouts, and they moved into the ruins alongside the Orcs. And then finally, it was the turn of the Rhino to deploy from off the battle grid, and that moved in just here at the bottom. So we've reached the end of turn 1, and the Ultramarines' high-speed transport, the land speeder Storm, has already been destroyed. The Orcs are pressing forward, try and slow down the Ultramarines. What can the Ultramarines do to get themselves towards that objective? Let's move into turn 2 and find out. Into turn 2, and this time the Ultramarines have the initiative, so they gave out their 4 orders first. So they've given 1 order to the Thunderfire cannon, 1 order to the Rhino, and an order each to the 2 tactical units inside that Rhino. Next, the Orcs gave their 3 orders. They've given 1 to the shock attack gun, 1 to this unit of sluggers, and finally 1 to this killer can. First activation for the Ultramarines, and it's this Rhino. The Rhino drives forward to this position and then fires on the move at the shock attack gun. So the Rhino's choosing to do suppressive fire on the move to try and put a suppressed marker on that shock attack gun. So the Ultramarines need a 5 or a 6 in order to put a suppressed marker down. However, they only managed to roll a 2, so the shock attack gun doesn't take a suppressed marker. First activation for the Orcs, and it's this shock attack gun. So the Orcs are desperate to get rid of that Rhino, and so the shock attack gun fires on the Rhino at point blank range. So the weapon is unstable, so the Orcs need to roll a 3 or more for the weapon to work. And the Orcs roll a 5, so the weapon can be used. So next the Orcs target this interspace. So obviously they'd like to target the back of the Rhino, but they can't see through it, so they have to target the front, which unfortunately overlaps with the shock attack gun. So the Orcs need a 5 or more to damage that Rhino. However, they only roll a 3, so the blast washes over the Rhino and does no damage. Let's see what happens to the shock attack gun. So the Ultramarines roll, and they get a 4, which is a hit. So instead of taking the hit, the Orcs play this card. They simply place a suppressed marker on the unit. Second activation for the Ultramarines, and it's this tactical unit that's inside the Rhino. The tactical squad choosing to do suppressing fire on the move against the shock attack gun and then move into assault. So first firing on the move needs a 5 or a 6. However, rolls a 1, which means it's a miss. And then moving into close assault. So the shock attack gun doesn't have any close assault ability, so they'll only be rolling 1 die, and the tactical squad will be rolling 2. So the Ultramarines roll very well, the Orc very poorly, which means that the tactical squad hit that shock attack unit and push them back. And so at the end of the assault, this is how things look. Second activation for the Orcs, and it's the sluggers unit. And he's choosing to engage Sergeant Elias in close assault. So he moves into this position and gains a support bonus from this adjacent Orc unit. So with that supporting Orc unit, the Orcs just have the edge going into the assault. This is the result of the dice roll, which means the sluggers have won the assault. Sergeant Elias only has a single life, and so he's destroyed. And so this is how it looks at the end of that assault. Third activation for the Ultramarines, and it's the second tactical unit that was inside the Rhino. So he's going to engage the shock attack gun in close assault, but on the way he's going to fire in the move at this sluggers unit. So the Ultramarines need to roll a 4 or more in order to hit that sluggers unit. However, they roll a 2, so it misses. Next, he moves into close assault. Again, the shock attack gun only rolls 1 die to the Ultramarines 2. The Orcs roll well, but so does the Ultramarine, and it's enough to eliminate that shock attack gun. So the Ultramarine moves into this location. So with the shock attack gun destroyed, the Orcs also lose that order token, so they're down to 2 orders. Third activation for the Orcs, and it's this killer can. And he's choosing to fire on the move at this scout unit. So the killer can needs to roll a 2 or more in order to eliminate that scout unit. And the Orcs just manage it with a roll of a 2. And this is how it looks when that scout unit has been removed. Fourth and final activation for the Ultramarines, and it's the Thunderfire Cannon. And choosing to fire across at these 2 slugger units. So rolling for scatter, and the template does scatter, so it scatters up towards the other sluggers unit. So next the Ultramarines need to roll to see what the damage is on that sluggers unit. They need to get a 1 or more to damage it, but if they can get enough they could totally eliminate that unit in one go. So the Ultramarines roll a 1, but it's enough to damage that sluggers unit. So right at the end of the activation phase, the Ultramarines play ready, and they're going to remove an activated marker from one of their units. And they choose to remove an activated marker from the Rhino, which means the Rhino will be able to move again in the supply phase. So the end of the supply phase for the Ultramarines. One scout unit has gone back to support the Thunderfire Cannon. The other scout unit has pushed up towards the shooters at the top. Next, Brother Venatio and Brother Praebian have pushed towards the gap in the barricades. And finally, the Rhino has pushed up to get as close as it can to the objective. Next, it's the Orcs' turn to move in the supply phase. So in the bottom corner, the Squigs and the Big Mech have moved up towards the objective, and now the Orcs control that objective. Next, the War Buggy has come back to here. The Killer Can has pushed forward towards the Rhino. And then almost all the Sluggers units and Shooters units that hadn't yet moved have moved towards the submersible. So that's the end of turn 2. Moving now into turn 3, and the Orcs have the initiative. It's the start of turn 3, and the Orcs have the initiative, and they immediately play this card, Tactician, to give them an extra order token for this turn. The Orcs place their order tokens first, 1 on the Killer Can, 1 on the Sluggers, and 1 on the War Bike at the bottom. Next it was the turn of the Ultramarines. They placed 1 on the Tactical unit, 1 on the Plasma Gun inside the Rhino, and finally 1 on Sergeant Vorolanus, who's also inside the Rhino. The Orcs' first activation is the Killer Can. So choosing to assault the Rhino, but on the way it'll be doing suppressing fire on this tactical squad. So it moves into this location. Next the Orcs play Burst into action so that it can fire without penalty when it's firing on the move. So the Killer Can is guaranteed to put 1 suppress token down on that tactical squad, but rolling to see whether he can put any more than 1 on. So not enough to put 2 on, but that's still 1 suppressed marker on that tactical squad that hasn't yet activated. And next the Killer Can moves into close assault with the Rhino. So the Orcs very much ahead in this assault, and rolling 2 dice to the Rhino's 1. This is the result of the dice throw, and so the Rhino takes a hit. And the Orcs roll to see where the damage occurs on the Rhino. They roll a 2, which means the Rhino is immobilized. First activation for the Ultramarines, and it's the Tactical unit. And they're choosing to do suppressing fire on the War Buggy. However, the Ultramarines roll a 2, which means they fail to hit the War Buggy. Second activation for the Orcs is a Sluggers unit. And they're choosing to throw a Tank Buster bomb at the Rhino. So the Tank Buster bomb is targeting this square, and so the Orcs need a 3 or more in order to hit the Rhino. But they only get a 2, and so it washes over the Rhino and does no damage. Second activation for the Ultramarines, and it's Sergeant Vorolanus inside the Rhino. He's choosing to assault this unit of Sluggers, and he'll be doing fire on the move at that unit of Sluggers before he gets into close assault. So starting with the firing on the move. So the Ultramarines need a 3 or more in order to damage that Sluggers unit. But they roll a 2, and so it's straight into the assault against the Sluggers unit. Sergeant Vorlanus moves into close assault, and then the Ultramarines play Vengeful Fury to add +3 to the result of their die roll. So going into the assault, the Ultramarines are ahead by 2. And so with the dice throw, that's just enough for the Ultramarines to knock back that Sluggers unit and damage them. Third activation for the Orcs, and it's the War Buggy at the bottom. So he has a clear shot at Sergeant Vorlanus, who's out in the open as he struggles to get through that polluted swamp. And the Orcs choose to play Courage, but for the +1 to the firing, just to make it that more likely that he manages to hit Sergeant Vorlanus. So now the Orcs need a 2 or more in order to hit Sergeant Vorlanus. They get lucky and roll a 6. Next, the Ultramarines play Go, 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 but to use the armor save bonus. The Ultramarine needs a 5 or a 6 in order for his armor to deflect that shot. It's not quite enough though, and he only rolls a 4. So Sergeant Vorlanus takes the hit. Third activation, and it's the plasma gun squad that are inside the Rhino. So choosing to engage the nearby Sluggers unit in close assault, but first going to fire on the move against the killer can. So the plasma gun unit chooses to use burst into action, which means that they don't get the penalty for fire on the move. Still needs to roll a 5 or a 6 though to take down that killer can. Rolls a 3 though, so misses the killer can. So next moves into close assault against the Sluggers unit. Then the Orcs play burst into action, but for the +1 to their assault. So that gives the Orcs a slight edge as they go into assault. This is a result of the dice roll, so that means it's enough for the Sluggers to damage that plasma gun unit. So this is how things look at the end of the activation phase. The Ultramarines taking hits as they come out of the Rhino and move across towards the objective. The Orcs are regrouping and putting up a strong defense. With 3 turns to go, can the Ultramarines get to that objective? Here we are halfway through the supply phase, and it's been the Orcs who are moving first. So the big mech has pushed up onto the objective. The unit of sluggers that was by the Rhino has moved here. And this unit of shooters have moved into this ruined building. Then on this side of the battle grid, the 2 units of sluggers have pushed into the gap between the barricades to try and block the Ultramarines' reinforcements. And this unit of shooters has moved out of the ruins and in behind Brother Parabian. Finally, the Killer Can has moved up towards the Thunderfire Cannon, and so has the unit of sluggers that are now hiding in the corner of this building. Next, it's the Ultramarines' turn to move in the supply phase. So in this bottom left corner, nothing has moved. So Thunderfire Cannon and the Scout stayed where they are, and Brother Parabian and Brother Venatio are kind of locked in position because of those Orcs pushing back. In the top right corner though, that unit of Scouts have pushed forward and become hidden. Then closer to the objective, only this unit of Tactical Marines has moved, and he's gone in to these rocks just by the war buggy. Right, we're into turn 4, and the Ultramarines have the initiative. The Ultramarines play Tactician. That gives them an extra order token. So starting on this side of the battle grid, the Ultramarines gave one of their order tokens to Brother Parabian, and another order token to the Thunderfire Cannon. And the Orcs gave one of their 2 order tokens to the Killer Can. Then on the right hand side of the battle grid, the Ultramarines gave an order token to this tactical unit, and one to the plasma gun that's still in the Rhino. And the Orcs gave their other order token to this unit of sluggers. First activation for the Ultramarines is Brother Parabian, and his target is that Killer Can. So he's aiming to take it down in close assault. So he can't fire on the move, but he gets into close assault with that Killer Can. And so it's even as they go into assault, so it'll come down to the dice. And it's a victory for the Killer Can. Brother Parabian has a saving throw, so he uses initiative for its armor save bonus. He needs to roll a 5 or a 6 in order to save himself from that hit. But he rolls a 2, So his armour doesn't protect him and he takes that hit. So the first activation for the Orcs, and it's the killer can. And I remember to add the suppression marker to the killer can because Brother Praebian has the terrifying ability, so he didn't destroy that killer can, so he gets to place a suppressed marker on it. So even though the killer can has that suppressed marker, it's still going to declare the Thunderfire cannon as the target of an assault, and then try to do fire on the move at the scouts. So the killer can needs a 5 or a 6 in order to take out those scouts. But the Orcs roll a 4, so it's not enough to kill that scout unit. So because that killer can was unable to remove that scout unit, that means it can't reach the Thunderfire cannon to engage it in assault. So because it can't reach its designated assault target, and that target is still on the board, then it can't change that target, so it can't retarget anything else. So that's the end of that killer can's turn. Second activation for the Ultramarines is the Thunderfire cannon. And it's choosing to fire across the board at targets on the submersible. So this is where the blast is targeted, and the Ultramarines roll to see whether or not it scatters. And the Ultramarines roll a 1, so it does indeed scatter. It ends up scattering and hitting the corner of the rhino. So rolling for damage, the Ultramarines would have to be quite unlucky. They'd need to roll a 6 in order to hit that rhino. And indeed they are unlucky, rolling a 6, which means that rhino has been hit. So the Ultramarines roll again to determine where they've hit their own rhino. So they roll a 4, which means it's not totally destroyed, but it does take 2 suppressed markers. So this is how things look after that Thunderfire blast hit the back of the rhino. Second activation for the Orcs, and it's this unit of sluggers. And so he's choosing to engage Sergeant Broilanus in close assault. The Ultramarines choose to play Courage, but for the +1 bonus in assault to help Sergeant Broilanus. So with that card in effect, it's even as they go into the assault. And it's a victory for the Ultramarines. So Sergeant Broilanus pushes back that sluggers unit onto the submersible, causing them damage. Third activation for the Ultramarines, and it's this tactical unit. He's declaring assault on this sluggers unit, and he's also going to fire on the move at that same unit on the way in. So the tactical squad needs a 3 or more to damage that sluggers unit, and the Ultramarines roll a 4, so that's a hit on that sluggers unit. But then as the Ultramarine moves out of cover, the Orcs play a card. They play Opportunistic Fire to give one of their units the Overwatch special ability, and they give the ability to the War Buggy. So the War Buggy just needs to roll a 2 or more to damage that tactical squad, and the Orcs roll a 3, which means that tactical squad's damaged as it comes across into close assault. So the tactical squad gets into close assault with those sluggers, so it's even as we go into the assault. And both the Orcs and the Ultramarines roll exactly the same, and so neither side wins this assault. The fourth and final activation is for the Ultramarines, and it's the plasma gun, firing from the rhino and choosing to throw a grenade at the 2 injured Orcs. So firstly against the Orc in the upper right, rolls a 4, which is a hit, and that destroys that slugger unit. Next, targeting the other sluggers unit, and rolls a 5, which also kills that sluggers unit. And at the end of the supply phase, this is how this side of the battle grid looks. So the Ultramarines push forward a tactical unit and the scouts. The Orcs, though, push forward quite a few units. So they brought the sluggers onto the objective, pushed the killer can round to be next to Sergeant Broilanus, and also pushed up these units of shooters and sluggers. And then at this end of the battle grid, the fight for the Thunderfire cannon continues. So the Ultramarines pulled back Brother Venatio, and the Orcs moved this unit of shooters and sluggers round as well. So here on this side of the battle grid, the fight is really for that Thunderfire cannon. Can the Ultramarines hang on to it and use it to pick off the targets close to the submersible? At the other end of the battle grid, Sergeant Broilanus' tactical squad are being cut off. It's up to them now to complete their mission and claim that objective. Can they do it? Let's move in to turn 5. So we're moving now into turn 5, and the Orcs have the initiative. And at the start of the orders phase, they play this card, Tactician, to give them an extra order token for this turn. So the Orcs have 3 orders for this turn. So they've given 1 order to this killer can, and then across the other side of the battle grid, they've given 1 order to the war buggy at the bottom, and 1 unit to the killer can by Sergeant Voralanus. Next, the Ultramarines put their orders down. They're given 1 to this tactical squad, 1 to the plasma gun, and 1 to Sergeant Voralanus. First activation for the Orcs, and it's this killer can, and choosing to engage the Thunderfire cannon in close assault. So it's 4 each as the killer can engages the Thunderfire cannon, but the killer can will be rolling 2 dice to the Thunderfire cannon's 1. And it's enough for the killer can to take down the Thunderfire cannon. The Thunderfire cannon has a saving throw, and the Ultramarines play it bounce right off, but for that armor save bonus. They need a 5 or a 6 to keep the Thunderfire cannon alive, and they roll a 6. And so the Thunderfire cannon gets pushed back, but is still alive. First activation for the Ultramarines is Sergeant Voralanus, and he's choosing to throw the last grenade, and he's going to throw it at the objective. So rolling to hit, starting top left with the sluggers and going anti-clockwise. So starting with the sluggers. So rolls a 1 against the sluggers, which means they don't get hit. Next, rolls a 2 against Malagra, which is not enough to hit him either. And finally, rolls a 3 against the squigs, which again is not enough to hit the squigs. So that grenade just bouncing off the side of that submersible, the curved hull taking the explosion away from those 3 units of Orcs. Second activation for the Orcs, and it's the killer can at the top. So the killer can is going to fire at Sergeant Voralanus. It probably would assault him, but it's not allowed to enter that green slimy pond. So the killer can needs a 3 or more to hit Sergeant Voralanus. And he rolls a 6, which is a hit. So Sergeant Voralanus falls, and his order token goes with him. So the Ultramarines will be now down to only 2 orders. Second activation for the Ultramarines is this tactical squad. So the tactical squad will be using suppressing fire on the move against the big mech, and then engaging him in assault. So the tactical squad need to roll a 5 or a 6 in order to put a suppressed marker on the big mech, but they only manage a 4, so then the tactical squad moves into close assault. The Ultramarines also choose to play just to graze for the +1 bonus in assault. The Orcs then choose to play no, but for its +1 bonus in assault. That means that the Orcs just have a slight edge over the Ultramarines as we go into the assault. So a good roll from the Ultramarines, but that 6 for the Orcs is enough to push back that tactical squad and cause a hit. Third activation for the Orcs is the war buggy at the bottom. So choosing to fire at the damaged tactical squad just in front. So it needs to roll a 3 or more to eliminate that tactical unit. And they manage to roll a 6, which is enough to remove that tactical squad. Third activation for the Ultramarines, and it's the plasma gun. And he's choosing to fire at the sluggers unit that are on the objective. And he needs to get a 2 or more. So rolls a 4, which is a hit. So now into the supply phase, and Brother Venatio moved across to try to get in range of the Thunderfire cannon in case it needs to use his apothecary skill. And on this side of the battle grid, again the Orcs not moving, but the scout unit right at the top of the board has moved up into those rocks. So at the end of turn 5, this is how things look on the side of the battle grid near the objective. So it's looking desperate now for the Ultramarines. They've only got 2 units that are close to the objective, and both of those are injured. The plasma gun is on the other side of the green swamp, so it would have to stop before it could get across it. So they're really going to struggle to take that objective. And the scout unit is stuck at the top out of the way. So it looks like there's no way back here for the Ultramarines, but we'll move into turn 6 and see if there's anything they can do to shift the Orcs from that objective. So here we are in the start of the 6th and final turn. So the Ultramarines have the initiative and they place their orders first. So over on this side of the battle grid, they place an order on the tactical squad. And while we're here, we'll look at the Orc orders. So the Orcs gave one order to the war buggy and the other order to Malagrat the big mech. And then moving over to the left-hand side of the battle grid, the Ultramarines gave an order to the Thunderfire cannon. The first order for the Ultramarines is the Thunderfire cannon. And that's choosing to fire across at the Orcs on the objective. And the scout at the top of the battle grid does have a clear line of sight to the objective. So that means that the template will only scatter 1 instead of 2 squares if it does scatter. So the Ultramarines roll to see whether it scatters, and they really need this to hit. They don't manage a hit, it does scatter, and it scatters over to the left 1 square, which means it ends up here. So resolving the attacks, I'll start with the sluggers in the top right, and the Ultramarines roll a 3, which is enough to kill off that sluggers unit. Next it hits the big mech Malagrar. Again the Ultramarines roll a 3, which is a hit on the big mech. So the big mech has the bodyguard in the squigs, so he could transfer that hit over to the squigs, but instead, because the squigs are on the objective, decides to take the hit himself. And then finally the Ultramarine tactical squad. And this time the Ultramarines get a bit lucky and roll a 1, which is not enough to damage that tactical squad. However, the Thunderfire cannon does do a frightening shot, which means that the tactical squad take a suppressed marker. So when the template is removed, this is what it looks like. First activation for the Orcs is the big mech. So he's just going to go into close assault with that tactical squad. So it's currently 5 against 3 in favour of the Orcs. The Orcs also add second chance for the +1 to their assault value. So that makes it 6-3 in favour of the Orcs. And also the big mech has the tearing special ability, which means that tactical squad will not get a saving throw. So if the Ultramarines lose this assault, then it's game over. So let's see what the dice say. And this is what the dice say. And it's all over for the Ultramarines as that big mech comes through and rips the tactical squad apart. However, maybe it's not all over. The Ultramarines play always ready and move the order token that was on the tactical squad over to one of the other units. They still have their final activation. So that order token is given to the plasma gun. So the second and final activation for the Ultramarines, and it's the plasma gun. The Ultramarines play all terrain, so this unit can ignore the restrictions tied to difficult passage. So this means the plasma gun can move through the green water without having to stop. So the plasma gun is going to move across onto the objective and then put down suppressing fire on the squigs. If those squigs are suppressed, then the Ultramarines will claim that objective. Next, the Ultramarines play no, but for the +1 to their firing bonus. So currently, doing fire on the move and using that extra bonus from the card means the plasma gun has a +2. The squigs have a defensive value of 6, which means the Ultramarine has to roll a 4, 5 or 6 in order to put a suppress marker on those squigs and win the game. And the Ultramarines roll a 5, which means that the squigs do take a suppress marker. And as soon as they take that suppress marker, it means they no longer hold that objective. And instead, the objective is taken by the Ultramarines. So on the very last roll of the very last activation, the Ultramarines bring it back from the brink and win the scenario. It doesn't matter that the Orcs still have one activation. As soon as the Ultramarines take that objective, they win the game. But this is not the end. The campaign will continue. There are 2 more scenarios to play out in the expansion packs. So because this has been an Ultramarine victory, then we'll be playing the scenarios in the Ultramarine reinforcement expansion. In those missions, we're going to join Captain Sicarius as he hunts for the Orc warboss Zanzag. I hope you enjoy this nail-biting finish. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.